The office was unusually quiet that morning, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums and makes you hyper-aware of every subtle sound. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting a sterile glow across the rows of cubicles. Sarah sat at her desk, staring blankly at the computer screen in front of her, though her mind was far from the spreadsheet she was supposed to be updating. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her coffee mug, the warmth of the ceramic doing little to calm the storm brewing inside her. It had been building for months, no years, the tension between her and Victoria, her boss. Victoria had always been a force to be reckoned with, the kind of person who walked into a room and demanded attention without saying a word. She was sharp, ambitious, and unapologetically ruthless when it came to climbing the corporate ladder. But lately, her behavior had crossed a line that Sarah hadn't realized existed until now. Yesterday's meeting replayed in Sarah's mind like a broken record. Victoria had stood at the head of the conference table, her perfectly tailored blazer hugging her shoulders as she leaned forward with an air of superiority. "Honestly," she had said, her voice dripping with condescension, "I could do your job in my sleep. Maybe even better than you're doing it awake." The room had gone silent, save for the soft clink of someone's pen hitting the table. Sarah had felt her cheeks burn, but she forced herself to keep her expression neutral, nodding along with the rest of the team as if Victoria's words were just another piece of constructive feedback. But they weren't. They cut deeper than any criticism ever had before. It wasn't just the insult, it was the casual way Victoria delivered it, as though dismissing Sarah's hard work and dedication was second nature to her. And maybe it was. Over the years, Sarah had noticed how Victoria treated others. Assistants were disposable, colleagues were pawns, and subordinates were merely stepping stones on her path to success. But Sarah had never imagined herself becoming one of those stepping stones. Now, sitting alone in the early hours of the morning, long before anyone else arrived, Sarah let herself feel the weight of it all. Her chest tightened as tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. Crying wouldn't solve anything. Neither would quitting, not yet anyway. No, this wasn't about running away. This was about proving something, not just to Victoria, but to herself. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she considered her next move. For weeks, she'd been working tirelessly on a project that could make or break her career. It was risky, innovative, and required more effort than anything she'd ever done before. She'd poured countless late nights and weekends into it, sacrificing personal time and energy to ensure it was perfect. And why? Because she believed in herself. Because she wanted to show Victoria, and everyone else, that she wasn't someone to be underestimated. But now, doubt crept in. What if Victoria was right? What if she really could do Sarah's job better, faster, smarter? The thought gnawed at her confidence, threatening to unravel everything she'd worked so hard to build. Yet beneath the fear and frustration, there was something else, a spark of defiance. Sarah clenched her fists under the desk, her nails digging into her palms. If Victoria thought she could walk all over her, she was wrong. Dead wrong. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through the blinds, painting golden streaks across her desk, Sarah made a decision. This wasn't going to be another day where she played by Victoria's rules. Today, she would take control. Not just of her work, but of the situation. Whatever happened next, she vowed, would be on her terms. Victoria breezed into the office shortly after 9, radiating the same commanding presence that always seemed to fill the room. Her stiletto heels clicked sharply against the tiled floor as she strode toward her corner office, her assistant trailing behind her with a stack of files. She didn't acknowledge Sarah as she passed, which wasn't unusual. To Victoria, Sarah was practically invisible unless she needed something, or wanted to tear her down. Sarah watched her go, her jaw tightening as she recalled their last conversation. Victoria's words echoed in her mind again, "I could do your job in my sleep." That phrase had burrowed itself into her thoughts, twisting and turning until it became less of an insult and more of a challenge. A dangerous idea began to form in Sarah's mind, one that felt reckless and thrilling all at once. She glanced at the clock. 10 minutes until the daily team meeting. Enough time to set her plan in motion. Rising from her chair, Sarah grabbed the folder containing her latest project proposal and headed toward Victoria's office. The door was slightly ajar, and she knocked lightly before stepping inside. Victoria looked up from her laptop, her eyebrows arching in mild surprise. "Sarah," she said coolly, leaning back in her chair. "What is it?" "I wanted to give you an update on the project," Sarah replied, placing the folder on Victoria's desk. It's almost ready for presentation. Victoria flipped open the folder, scanning the contents with disinterest. Good. Make sure it's polished. I don't want any mistakes. Sarah hesitated, then added, Actually, I was wondering if you'd like to review it tonight. You know, since you mentioned you could do my job in your sleep. Victoria smirked, closing the folder. Are you questioning my ability to handle your workload? No, Sarah said quickly, though her heart was pounding. I'm just curious. If you're so confident, maybe you'd like to prove it. Take a look at the project tonight and see what you think. For a moment, Victoria studied her, her piercing gaze making Sarah feel exposed. Then she shrugged. Fine. Leave it here. I'll glance at it later. Great, Sarah said, forcing a smile. Let me know what you think tomorrow. As she left the office, Sarah couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. The seed was planted. Now, all she had to do was wait. The rest of the day passed in a blur of emails, meetings, and deadlines. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, most of the office had cleared out, leaving only a few stragglers behind. Sarah lingered at her desk, pretending to organize files while keeping an eye on Victoria's office. Sure enough, just after 6, Victoria emerged, clutching the folder Sarah had given her earlier. She muttered something to her assistant, who nodded and scurried off, before heading toward the elevators. Perfect. Once Victoria was gone, Sarah sprang into action. She slipped into her boss's office, closing the door quietly behind her. The room smelled faintly of expensive perfume and coffee, a testament to the long hours Victoria spent working, or pretending to work. Sarah moved to the desk, opening drawers and rifling through papers until she found what she was looking for, Victoria's schedule for the week. With a triumphant grin, Sarah pulled out her phone and snapped a photo of the document. Tomorrow, she would implement phase 2 of her plan. For now though, she had one last task to complete. Returning to her own desk, Sarah opened her laptop and drafted an email. It was addressed to the entire department, including upper management. In it, she outlined the progress of her project, highlighting key achievements and innovations. She attached a preliminary report, complete with graphs and data to support her claims. Before hitting send, she paused, rereading the final sentence. I look forward to presenting the full scope of this project during our upcoming meeting. Her finger hovered over the mouse. This was it. Once she sent the email, there would be no turning back. Taking a deep breath, Sarah clicked send, and leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. The game was officially on. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the office earlier than usual, determined to stay ahead of whatever curveballs Victoria might throw her way. As she settled into her desk, she noticed a flurry of activity near Victoria's office. Curious, she got up to investigate, only to find her boss pacing back and forth, her face flushed with anger. What's going on? Sarah asked innocently, approaching one of the assistants. She didn't get much sleep last night, the assistant whispered. Something about staying up late reviewing your project. Sarah bit the inside of her cheek to suppress a smile. So, Victoria had taken the bait. Good. When Victoria finally emerged from her office, she looked exhausted, dark circles shadowing her eyes. She called Sarah into her office, her tone clipped and impatient. We need to talk about this project of yours, she said, waving the folder in the air. Some of these ideas are unconventional. Unconventional can also mean innovative, Sarah countered, standing tall despite the knot forming in her stomach. I believe it has potential. Victoria narrowed her eyes. Potential doesn't pay the bills. Stick to what works, Sarah. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Sarah swallowed hard, but she refused to back down. Sometimes, reinventing the wheel is exactly what we need to move forward. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Victoria sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. Fine. Present it at the meeting. But don't embarrass me. I won't, Sarah promised, though her mind raced with possibilities. Embarrassment wasn't part of her plan, but shaking things up certainly was. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah continued to push boundaries, subtly challenging Victoria's authority while maintaining a veneer of professionalism. Each interaction left her feeling more empowered, more certain that she was on the right path. Still, she knew the real test was yet to come. Victoria wasn't the type to let anyone undermine her, especially not someone she viewed as beneath her. And Sarah was ready. Whatever happened next, she would face it head-on. The day of the big presentation arrived, and the conference room buzzed with anticipation. Everyone knew this meeting was important. It wasn't just another routine update, it was Sarah's chance to showcase her groundbreaking project. Upper management had been invited, which meant the stakes were higher than ever. As Sarah stood at the front of the room, adjusting the projector and organizing her notes, she could feel Victoria's icy glare boring into her from across the table. Victoria sat at her usual spot, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line. She hadn't said much to Sarah that morning, but her silence spoke volumes. It was clear she didn't expect Sarah to succeed. In fact, she probably hoped for failure. But Sarah had spent countless hours preparing for this moment. Every detail, every number, every potential question had been meticulously planned out. She wouldn't let Victoria, or anyone else, derail her now. As the meeting began, Sarah took a deep breath and launched into her presentation. Her voice was steady, confident, as she walked the team through the innovative strategies she developed. The room grew quieter with each slide, the initial skepticism giving way to genuine interest. Even some of the senior executives leaned forward in their seats, nodding along as Sarah explained how her ideas could revolutionize not just one department, but the entire company. When she reached the final slide, a bold projection of growth metrics based on her plan, the room erupted into murmurs of approval. One of the VPs raised his hand, asking thoughtful questions about scalability and implementation timelines. Sarah answered calmly, her preparation paying off. By the end of the presentation, even Victoria seemed momentarily speechless. "Well," Victoria finally said, forcing a tight smile, "it's certainly ambitious." "It's more than ambitious," interjected Mr. Caldwell, the CEO, who had been quietly observing from the corner. "This is exactly the kind of forward thinking we need around here." "Great work, Sarah." Sarah felt a rush of pride and relief as the room broke into applause. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to fully absorb the validation she so desperately deserved. But the victory wasn't complete yet. Not while Victoria still held power over her. Later that afternoon, Sarah was summoned to Victoria's office. The tension in the air was palpable as she entered, closing the door behind her. Victoria sat behind her desk, her expression unreadable. "Take a seat," Victoria said curtly, gesturing to the chair opposite her. Sarah complied, bracing herself for whatever came next. "You've made quite the impression today," Victoria began, her tone laced with something between admiration and resentment. "I'll admit, I underestimated you." Sarah met her gaze steadily. "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." Victoria studied her for a long moment before continuing. "But don't think this changes anything. You're still my subordinate, and I'm still your boss." "Am I?" Sarah asked softly, surprising even herself with her boldness. "Because if memory serves, you told me you could do my job in your sleep. And last night, you proved that point perfectly." Victoria stiffened, her composure cracking for the first time. "What are you talking about?" "I saw your schedule," Sarah explained, leaning forward slightly. "You stayed up all night trying to review my project. Instead of delegating or trusting your team, you tried to micromanage everything yourself. And look where it got you. You're exhausted, irritable, and no closer to understanding what makes this project successful." Victoria opened her mouth to retort, but Sarah cut her off. "The truth is, Victoria, you can't have it both ways. You can't claim to be better than everyone else while refusing to lead effectively. A real leader empowers their team, not tears them down. If you want to keep doing my job in your sleep, maybe it's time you actually did." For a moment, Victoria looked like she might explode. But then unexpectedly she laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You really think you're smarter than me, don't you?" "No," Sarah replied firmly. "I think I'm capable. And I think I deserve to be treated with respect. If you can't give me that, then maybe it's time for a change." The two women stared at each other, the weight of Sarah's words hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Victoria sighed, running a hand through her perfectly styled hair. "Fine. Have it your way. I'll talk to HR about reassigning you to a different department, one where you won't have to deal with me anymore." Sarah nodded, standing up. "Thank you. That's all I wanted." A week later, Sarah found herself promoted to a new role within the company, overseeing a team of her own. It was a position she'd dreamed of for years, and it came with the autonomy and recognition she'd earned. Meanwhile, whispers spread throughout the office about Victoria's declining performance. Without someone to constantly undermine, her leadership style crumbled under scrutiny, and soon enough, she was reassigned to a less prominent role. On Sarah's first day in her new office, she received an email from Mr. Coldwell congratulating her on her promotion. Attached was a note: "Keep pushing boundaries. We need more people like you." Smiling to herself, Sarah leaned back in her chair, gazing out the window at the city skyline. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly free. Free from doubt, free from fear, and free from Victoria's shadow. She had proven not only to her boss but to herself that she was capable of greatness. And that was a victory worth savoring.